Hello and welcome to an all-new Marvelcast, Explosion Network's hub of all things Marvel, a place to talk about everything MCU and beyond, from Avengers and Defenders to Midnight Man and Sekhmet. My name is Ashley and Ciaran, the Explosion Network's podcast host with multiple personalities, and joining me today is Ultimate Ciaran Marchant.
Alright everyone, how's everybody doing today?
Not enough Steven in this episode, I think.
No, I think actually I have like a big issue with Steve in this episode.
Whoa, let's get
There was some I was not on board with Steve in this episode for much of it.
Alright, let's get straight into it. So we're talking about the latest episode of Moon Knight. Episode 3, The Friendly Type, directed by Mohamed, Diab, written by Beau, DeMayo, and Peter Cameron and Sabir Pirzada. With Marc in the forefront and Harrow ahead, Marc and Layla navigate Cairo for intel. Ciaran, what do you think of this week's episode of Moon Knight?
I've got really mixed emotions about this week's episode of Moon Knight, because I think at some point it was really good. Another point, it had a couple tropes that really pissed me off in movies and in writing in general, that bothered me a little bit too much today. And I'm going to start with the first trope, which happens in a lot of movies and TV shows and books, where protagonist goes to, like, overseeing council of people, or kind of a leadership team or something, and goes, hey guys, there's this fucking problem, and I'm going to point you in the right direction of the problem. And then that council of people go, alright, well, we'll bring the other person in and listen to that person. Then they're like, oh, nah, see you later. He seems like a nice old man. Don't worry about it, fuck you. And it's just so frustrating, because I'm like, I understand what you're trying to do. Like, I understand that you're trying to set more of the odds against Marc. You want to show that the Egyptian gods feel jaded, feel angry. That
explain why they're not here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what do you? Wait, you asking me to explain? Or?
No,
exactly.
The show is explaining why they aren't
they're
more
trying to
involved.
explain why they're not more involved, that they feel angry and stuff. I get that, but at the same time, it's just so frustrating to. It would have been almost more interesting to have them almost try and give him a more of a chance, or like do something a little bit more than just being like, nah, bro, you're having a laugh. Nah, there's no reason. Like it's like, I get it. Their relationship with Kashun is damaged. He's the exiled person of the gods. I get it. But at the same time, it's like, the dude just caused a fucking eclipse. I'm sure this god, who knows that he's going to piss everybody off, wouldn't do that just for the sake of it, or just to fuck around or anything. It's just a really frustrating trope, and I just was, it's just at a point now where I've always disliked it, but I'm just really over it. And it's not so much Moon Knight's problem and Moon Knight's fault, but at the same time,
a little bit.
I think they could have done better. I also think they could have done better with the presentation of the gods. I was very not confused, but I feel like the differentiation between the Avatar and the god taking over them was obvious in
a handful.
Not even a handful, because I think in Oscar Isaac's performance, I feel like his performance displayed that he was being overtaken. And
he was the only one with like a different voice, I think.
He was with a different voice, exactly, 100%. Different voice, different mannerisms, his whole body. And yes, I guess that's them trying to portray that maybe these other people are used to this feeling now and used to it. But still, at the same time, I wish there was more of a differentiation in their mannerisms, a differentiation in the way they spoke, to kind of really bring the levity of the fact that these are the Egyptian gods that are coming through and are embodying these avatars. I just, as that scene as a whole, I wasn't a fan of. The other couple bits I really didn't like.
I will say, I mean, the court scene, it's kind of realistic, because the person accused comes in and does a complete character assassination of the character accusing him. So naturally, he's got mental problems. So let's dismiss everything he says.
It is, but it's
it's sad, but yeah, it's very
it is. I guess
true
if
to
they're
life.
trying to if they're the thing is, to me, that I feel like that should be done in a more true to life and down to earth setting rather than by gods and stuff. And
hey, it's in the middle of the Pyramid of Giza and
yeah, like instead of having this symbolism, like if you're trying to bring real life attention to a problem that these people had where they're discredited because of their mental their mental health and their disability, I don't know, it just feels weird in this context.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do love his defense of, I'm just checking out some sand. You know? I'm not doing anything shady.
It's just like, that's the thing, right? And they instantly just take his word for it. And I was... You know what? I thought at the end of the episode, I was like, oh, maybe I have reacted too early. Maybe there's this subplot of him being involved more with the gods and the gods being more involved with his plan. And I thought it was a possibility, and when they first appeared in the end scene together, and I was like, oh no, they're just trying to...
No, they're just dumb.
They're just dumb, and it's really fucking frustrating. Yeah, it's frustrating.
No,
and
I get
that. My comments about not liking Steven so much in this episode, Steven's almost willingness or wanting to jump in the way of any time Marc was like doing something that was potentially hurting somebody. I get it that Steven's more of a pacifist type character and everything. And I guess Steven maybe isn't reading the situation, that like it was quite obvious that they had made points in like for the audience. They made points that Marc actually wasn't trying to kill anybody or hurt anyone. Like, they'd made, like, obvious thing of him, like, almost punching the kid and then turning it into a slap.
Just slapping him in the face.
And just slapping him in the face. And it from an audience perspective, they'd shown that, oh, Marc isn't actually trying to kill anybody here. And Steven's still stepping in like, no, you stop doing this. You're going to kill somebody. And it's, like, it's really frustrating. And then... Yes, it leads on to the next point that there is a suggestion that there is a third host of this body, potentially, that we don't know of, that is the more violent nature, whether that be the god himself or another personality. Personally, I would lean more over into it being another personality. But it was just frustrating. And then it happened again in that, like, kind of the extended fight scene, like later on at the
near the sarcophagus
with the horses and near the sarcophagus
and the spears and
everything. Yes. Which
I actually love that.
I love.
Hopefully, he learns a lesson.
I think hopefully he learns a lesson. But so a couple of things. I actually think that was the best fight scene of the series so far. I think finally putting Moon Knight against actual humans and letting some of the fantastic stunt choreographers and fight choreographers of the Marvel Universe get their hands properly on kind of having real-life actors to interact with, I think really made this much better. They got... Not only did they get great kind of close hand-to-hand combat throughout it, they also were able to pick out awesome moments like the... I want to almost call it Batman-esque, which is kind of bad for them to have done it because it makes it very similar to Batman, but with the jumping and showing like the moon cape as he's flying down as a silhouette, I was like, A, that's really cool, B, that's really Batman, and you guys should maybe be trying to get away from those similarities,
just,
whatever.
If you got a cape,
then also
might as well.
him like redirecting all the bullets that were put into his cape and like flicking them back out at everyone. I was like, that's some cool shit. That's awesome. Steven trying to take over in the middle of that fight annoyed the shit out of me because I'm like, what do you... A couple of things.
What do you think you're doing?
What do you think you're going to do in this situation? What do you feel like you're going to do in this situation, or just you changing is going to stop everything and fix everything? But also at the same time, I just... Every time they swap to Steven and that in his version of the suit, it's just like, guys, you're trying really hard to have Deadpool moments in this. Like, I feel like you're trying really hard to have that kind of zany, comedic style that is in Deadpool with that R-rated kind of flesh through it. Like, it is... Maybe not the R-ratedness to it, but...
I don't know. I feel like the tones... with Steven, it comes from, like, a sincere place.
It does, but I don't...
Like a fish out of water position.
It just feels like, yes, it's a fish out of water, but also at the same time, it's like... Okay,
I mean,
Steven
it looks
just...
it looks like a white version of Deadpool, so that doesn't help.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, is Steven just stupid here, or I guess they're trying to continue to sell the fish out of water concept for Steven, but at the same time, it's like, how dense does a character have to be that's apparently very smart and very in terms of ancient history and maybe not socially, but to be able to read a situation and be like, what am I actually going to be able to do in this
He really believed he could talk it out. Most of them have been knocked down, and then he got several spears put through him, and
then he
happily
immediately
gave the body.
he's immediately like, switch back. She's like, my god, it just, yeah.
I don't know. I think it was a funny moment.
I think it's a funny moment, but at the same time, it just didn't. I guess that's just my personal feelings about Steven's interactions throughout this episode, kind of shining a light on that moment differently for me. Maybe I'm just a Grinch and don't like fun, but that could be it. And then also, I think they shit the bed with this like introduced character that they have like kind of brought on. I thought it could have been a really interesting kind of layer to what's going on if he became a disciple of Ethan Hawke's character and was more involved there going forward.
Who, the Anton?
Yes, Anton, that guy. Because I was like, oh, there could be something more interesting here. This could be brought through. I'd be excited to see him, but then he's still involved in that final fight scene, and he gets a moon thrown at him, like a moonerang. A moonerang, there we go.
Moonerang.
A moonerang thrown at him, and it's very ambiguous how injured the moonerang hurt him in that moment. And then, because this has already been like 12 minutes of we whinging about this episode already, just as my final bit, was really not a fan of Marc gaslighting in the car about obviously alluding to Mark's hand in his wife's father's death, or alluding to Marc knowing information about.
I just assumed he didn't want to reveal his motivations about
no,
Koshu
to me,
wanting...
to me that more was him wanting to hide.
He knows something.
He knows something. I think he knows something about her father's death, and it gave the vibes that he was maybe directly responsible for her father's death, and he's worried about her throwing it out. I was just really not comfortable with him actually gaslighting her in that moment afterwards, because it's like, oh, maybe
he's been a spy this entire time, and he got in too deep.
God. Maybe. No. I don't know. It's just... It's just I get it. You're trying to be... This character is supposed to be morally ambiguous, but also at the same time, throughout this whole episode already, in the episode before, you've shown Marc is actually a good person deep down. He does kind of morally... Like, you would call him chaotic good more than anything. So to have this kind of manipulative trait to him, or this gaslighting happen, it's just... It feels very weird to have that as a trait of your protagonist. Especially when it's, it's in connection with somebody he loves, somebody he's married to, and I don't love the message that sends out with it, and the circumstances around that.
Yeah.
Which I think those are my biggest grievances and gripes about this episode.
No, that's fair. I think it was a fine episode. It probably... I mean, the setting is cool. Obviously, it looks like they definitely shot in Egypt and stuff.
Minor points, actually. Egypt was really great. I thought how they used Egypt was cool. Also, the score for this whole episode was awesome.
Yeah, it was really different when the opening I don't know, logo or whatever is coming in as playing. I don't know what type of music how you would describe that.
You would
modern Arabic, I guess, maybe.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I think a lot of the night fights were pretty good. Like, even the hand-to-hand stuff was pretty great when it's just Marc against these dudes. Although, those knives were, like, ridiculously shiny. Like,
very shiny.
It's like...
I think that was supposed to be...
They were brand new out of a box?
I think that was supposed to be so they could use them as a mirror for...
Let's be honest, those knives were green.
It's either that or the knives aren't real. The knives are somehow CGI replaced knives. So that they could work.
Yeah, I think that they were green screen knives.
Yes, yeah. Like they were cut in.
They were just
shots.
too shiny.
Yeah.
Way too shiny. I know they wanted to use it as mirror and that, but yeah, that was a little bit too shiny. I think, yeah, the whole council thing was all weird. It was kind of... It was fine. I mean, it wasn't super exciting, and especially when your hero kind of gets shot down, like, in, 10 seconds. It's like...
Yeah.
You're like, oh, these jerks. What? They don't even give him a chance.
And look, and I thought it was a really humbling moment, Marc being like, yes, I am sick.
Yeah.
I'm taking that on.
I think that, and then his talk with Layla about him thinking he had it in control until just recently.
Yeah.
Makes me think this is something that he's had all along. He's had this for a long time. Obviously, he was taking some sort of medication or something to stay in control. But yeah, that's an interesting wrinkle to this. That but we can rule out that Steven is something that's been put in his body or something. This was Steven's always been there. This book. Yeah,
and I think that it's. I will say, for all of the negative comments I had about different endings of the character and that scene in particular, it is very refreshing for this character to be like, yes, I am sick. There is something going on inside of me. Instead of normal protagonists or normal kind of written characters are like, no, I'm fine. Stop trying to tell me I'm sick. It's refreshing to have
I can do anything. I'm just,
yeah,
nothing's wrong with me.
Exactly, and not admitting it or anything. I think it's very good and refreshing for him to immediately, take that on.
Yeah, I really like Layla even more this episode. I think she's really good. I thought she was
great.
Yeah, I thought especially the way even her fight was pretty solid.
I actually really loved
the black dude.
Sorry. Yeah, I thought as soon as she had that necklace thing on, I was like, okay, that's a weapon of some kind or something.
Yeah.
Doesn't quite go with your outfit, in my opinion, so I hope it has a practical reason. But I really did love her interactions with Steven at the last final scene. I thought the admiration almost and the interest she had in Steven was
interesting.
Very interesting, but very sweet and wholesome at the same time, which is...
It's interesting that she's kind of accepted Steven so quickly. That's the only other thing.
Yes, yeah, and that she is accepting of it and understanding of it, and to give this episode praise or to give Oscar Isaac praise, because I think Oscar Isaac himself's doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, and him switching between the two.
The switch, I was like, damn, that's fucking awesome. To be able to just show in your facial expressions and your body language while all on camera, no cuts, no weird kind of the camera pointing at the mirror and showing the mirror or anything, just letting Oscar Isaac have that moment and letting him show that change physically, I thought that was fucking great.
I mean, it's the second best one of anything that's coming out this week. You should all go watch Everything Everywhere All at Once in cinemas tomorrow, Thursday. Plug. But yeah, but interesting. The episode ends with the god losing all his getting put in stone, and we assume there's no more Moon Knight anymore. They won't have access to a suit anymore.
For now, I'm sure he'll break out.
I mean, there's 3 episodes left, so I mean,
it
will happen eventually. But on the other hand, it's 3 episodes out. It's that's something you do penultimate episode. It's everything's gone wrong. They have no access to their powers.
It did feel slightly rushed that they go from, hey, if you fuck with the sky or do something like this one more fucking time, we're going to put you into stone. You're going to be in stone. Instead of letting that be a pressure that's hanging over them for an episode or two.
20 minutes later.
20 minutes later, it's 20 minutes later, it's oh, if we got to do it, fuck it. There's no other way.
Well, again, that effect looked pretty cool of him
very good.
Turning back this time of the stars. So
we now understand where the CGI budget came from.
From last week.
From the last 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah. It was all put into stars.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anything else feel we need to talk about from this week's episode of Moon Knight?
No, I think.
I mean,
this...
it was pretty bold for that kid to like cut off his tie.
Dude,
that was like.
Man. But isn't that the thing, right?
And then the god's like, I thought it was really going to talk.
It's actually interesting. I'm enjoying the moon god's. I actually think he's really interesting because there's moments you're like, well, this guy's a douche. This guy's a dickhead. He is using Marc here. He is exploiting Marc here. And then other times he's actually really likable and he's a bit more down to earth. And there is this kind of humanity to his characters. And look, this is the stuff with the gods. I think is it's something actually close to my heart because one of my favorite kind of books growing up, or kind of inspirations for writing and creativity, was I really enjoyed how the Percy Jackson series and kind of series that led onto it, not the movies, get away from the movies, kind of their handling of the gods and showing the gods having their own humanity and having their own flaws, having their own wants and desires, which is a very Greek thing. I think it's interesting that he shows that where the rest of the gods weren't really.
But that's because they're detached themselves.
That's it. Yeah,
that could be it.
That.
Yeah,
and that would be it's an interesting foil to it, but yeah, I feel like maybe they rushed it a little bit to have him removed and put into stone.
Halfway through.
Yeah, like kind of
yeah.
or at least immediately in the same episode. Like it would have been almost interesting for, not interesting, but like the foil to, like his several of Marc's issues would be, hey, I could have fixed this by fucking around with the sky or by doing this, but I can't do that because it's not worth the risk of me turning into stone, and then eventually having the god
make it a more powerful moment.
Yeah, make it a more powerful moment and choice. I actually really liked his interaction with Steven, and I thought there was a real softness compared to all of the other interactions.
He saw his value now.
Yeah, he saw his value. I just think that was a bit rushed. I think if that had been a bit of a slower build and more of a development between the characters, it would pay off a lot better, and we'd see a lot more, which I think is a common problem personally of mine with these MCU shows, is especially with these couple now that have had 6 episode runs, where it feels like how they're fitting them into 6 episodes is cutting out on some of the character development and writing. They're not necessarily cutting out action set pieces or cutting out anything of those kind of value.
Yeah.
It seems to be the build up for characters is what's being cut down and streamlined very much so across these shows.
Yeah, I agree. And before we finish up, Ethan Hawke in that last scene.
Ethan Hawke, just anytime. I really was trying to avoid this episode talking about Ethan Hawke chewing scenery, but I haven't seen much Ethan Hawke as of late. I'm not really probably the audience for much of his roles. Kind of, I know yourself and Dylan would have seen him in a lot, but seeing him take the screen in this one is almost where I see him being maybe at a different forefront in kind of, at least I guess, the more popular mediums of sectors of movies and kind of the higher budget movies. Going forward, because I think he's fantastic.
Yeah, that scene, like, just him, like, this victory is because of you. So it's like it's pretty big F you to him and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, looking forward to next week's episode. Hopefully we get some, like, I feel like we're missing so much backstory, and I feel like maybe that's where they're going to go next episode, because, you know, the guy's been trapped. Let's do a flashback episode. You know, fill everybody in as to why all these things happened. That seems like a thing that would happen.
Right? Is like, I think a flashback episode works in a longer series. Yeah. I think making the choice to take an episode out of a 6 episode run to do a flashback episode.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a complete flashback episode. You know, it could be you do what the Book of Boba Fett tried to do, where it's like part in each. Or it could just commit. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Let us know what you thought of this week's episode of Moon Knight by going to explosion.com/Twitter or jump into our Discord at explosion.com/Discord. If you want to help us out here at All New Marvelcast, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or on Podchaser. Tell people about the show, that always helps. Or leave us 5 stars anywhere that you can leave us 5 stars. And if you liked what we're doing here at All New Marvelcast, head on over to our Ko-fi page at explosionnetwork.com/support and donate as little as $1 to keep the lights on here at the Explosion Network. Alright. Well, make sure you watch next week's episode, which may or may not be a flashback episode. And then come back here and join us for another All New Marvelcast.